grateful for them to agreeing with our invitation. And once more, these four speakers, they will give an account of their experience, work, one or more case studies, projects that they're working on or projects that they have worked on, and then we unfold into a conversation. We are slightly more relaxed in terms of time because it's the last panel of the day. But still, we've asked each of our speakers to speak for between 7 and 10 minutes. We're going to start with Gabriel Abrantes, who's going to be followed by Hilde Teerlinck, followed by Lena Vaney, and last but certainly not least, Leonardo Bigazzi. Once more, they don't need introductions. Their biographies are on the booklet of the symposium, and they're also going to be speaking about their practice. So we're going to leave the stage to them, and thank you all for joining us. And Gabriel, if you want to start, we're ready.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Filipa, and thank you, Loop. Very happy to be here. I'm going to take you through a bit of, I guess, the history of my work, sort of very, very, very fast. And then we're going to focus mostly on this piece, which is Bardo Loop, which is, I guess, the last big video film work that I've done. So anyway, there were low-budget films, and they were experimental. They were coming sort of from a logic, I don't know, my love of Kenneth Anger or Andy Warhol and this sort of 60s, 70s tradition of experimental film. And also as a reaction sort of against structural cinema in a certain way. As I was studying, I really felt like, I don't know, there was sort of an escape from meaning in film art in a way, and a running away from sort of, I don't know, I guess a narrative logic. And so I thought it was sort of provocative to make narrative films as art. So I started making very traditional in terms of A to B narratives. They have a beginning, they have an end, they have, I guess, a very classic narrative structure. But then in terms of installation, they were built-in sets that I would build within galleries or museums. As you can see, sort of, they're very low budget sort of props, like this is within a gallery, there's fake snow falling, etc. And then you see the film within the installation that it was filmed in. So it was something that was very inspired on Matthew Barney and his, I guess, film practice that I saw Cremaster when I was at school in 2004, and that really sort of inspired me to start this. But then at a certain point, I was making these films, and these films, they were always touching on topics of post-colonialism, gender politics, sexuality, but you know, they were sort of in a microcosm of the gallery and this artificial space that I was constructing. So I was like, okay, no, I want to take this practice actually to the real world in a certain way. So I started making movies in 2010 that were no longer in the gallery. And so I was going to very specific contexts. I went to film in Brasilia, in Haiti, in Sri Lanka, Angola. And a lot of the films started talking about the actual context that they were filmed in, whether the post-colonial reality in Luanda, the Chinese immigration, and I guess the sort of integration or lack of integration of the Chinese population in Angola. And so that took me through, I guess, a bunch of years. And these films I still showed in film festivals and in galleries and museums as installations. And then there's another shift, which in 2018 I make my first feature film, Diamantino, which is a film I don't really show in galleries anymore. It's a film that's shown in film festivals, cinemas. It has a commercial distribution. It's about Cristiano Ronaldo, a sort of satire, but he sees big, fluffy puppies when he's playing soccer. It still talks about the same topics. It's still talking about gender, sexuality, the immigration crisis, refugee crisis, and then stardom, superstardom, inequality in Europe. So it's basically the story of Cristiano Ronaldo adopting who he thinks is a refugee, but it ends up being somebody who's investigating his taxes. But anyway, this film did well on the film festival circuit. It won the grand prize at Cannes Critics Week, and then was distributed in normal cinemas. Then very recently, I made Amelia's Children, which is a horror film. So even going further towards, I guess, genre cinema in a way. Still playing with a lot of I guess the same things of politics, sexuality, yeah, and also the provocation that I think I was describing at the beginning of this presentation, of going towards very low or traditional forms as a form of provocation. So doing a horror film is a sort of provocation. And then the piece I wanted to talk about most is Loop, which is, it's a 4-screen installation. It's something that's not supposed to be, it's not going to be really screened in film festivals or cinemas. It's something that's just an installation to be seen in galleries or museums. And it's full animation, so it actually now moves away from the real world and back into a totally artificial world again. These 4 videos, they started off as a commission from Centro de Arte Moderna, Gulbenkian Foundation. And it was basically a new commission to push the collection into the future in a way, sort of like the big renovation that Gulbenkian has gone through architecturally, is, you know, placing the museum as in the contemporary in a certain way. And the curators, when they came to talk to me, they wanted to make, I guess, a show framing the collection in terms of revolution, because it's the 50th anniversary of the Portuguese 25th of April revolution. But also, they wanted to mostly focus on what are the revolutions that are needed today, whether it's climate revolutions, economic revolutions, identity revolutions. And I took this sort of, you know, they came to me because they thought my work already dealt with a lot of this stuff. And I wanted to make basically videos that grabbed a logic from the drama of my previous work, from the sort of traditional narrative structures that I would do in my previous work, but in its most modular form, which is an argument. The heart of drama is 2 people arguing. That's sort of where theater comes from. And so each one of these videos was 2 ghosts having a big argument. This showing some of my paintings, which is where I guess the ghosts come from, and a lot of this language of floods and yeah. It was sort of basically transforming these paintings into animations. And at a certain point, I was trying to make these arguments in between basically extremes, political extremes today. An extreme right-wing person with an extreme left-wing person. But as I was trying to write these arguments in between these ghosts, I was really uninspired. It didn't really click for me in a certain way. And at a certain point, I started grabbing from real-life arguments that I had and expanding on them and transforming them. And here, I'm going to pause here for a second. Oh, that doesn't work. Anyway, the image you just saw is Irma Lucia, which is important. I wanted to get to that because it's a bit about the production aspect of this work. But these arguments, yeah, they weren't working, so I started making them very personal in a certain way, and then the work started flourishing. So, I don't know, it was interesting because the piece, there was the moment of the curators coming to speak to me and asking for this commission, and then me having immediately a very clear idea of wanting to do these arguments about extremes, political extremes, and then being lost for about 6 months, 7 months. And then at a certain point, I had a real fight in my life, and I was like, oh, let's just try to write this fight almost word for word in a certain way. And all of a sudden, as I was writing that, it became clear that this was the piece. And this was something that might have been, in a way, my work always had little hints of autobiography, but never so literally as these pieces. And I don't know, this was a real moment of change in my work for this one. In terms of production, I don't know, the first films that I was showing from 2006 to 2009, they're extremely low budget, 16 millimeter productions. I was financing them from my wallet, basically. I'd buy a roll of film for $100, pay $100 to the film lab to develop the film. I'm editing myself, acting myself, getting the camera from a school or a friend, etc. So very small productions. As I started trying to grow the films, I started trying to find financing in different places. One came from a Portuguese art prize from Prémio Novos Artistas in Portugal. Then I ended up getting that prize. I used the prize money to finance the next film. Then that film won a prize. I also used that money to do the next one. So basically everything that came in from the films went back into the films. And also I was painting at the same time, my last painting show had been in 2008 at the time, and all the money from the paintings was also going into the films. So it's this very precarious, I think it's something that most everybody in this room knows, the precarious nature of producing artist film and video art. And then at a certain point I started applying to state financing in Portugal for cinema, and that's when I guess the scale of the production started changing a lot. And Diamantino and Amelia's Children are films that are on a whole different scale from the smaller productions that I had been doing, sort of more DIY. They're very traditional European co-produced films. And then Bartoloops goes away from that again, and it's a film that's financed by Gulbenkian, and then we still need to sell the second edition to keep financing because went a little bit over budget, but yeah, it's a different scale of project from the feature films, but also definitely different scale from the first films that I did. And in terms of production, this one, I don't know, it was really interesting because I filmed real actors in a real space, and then we modeled all the ghosts that are in the videos on these actors' movements. But most of the work was actually done by this studio that showed up, Irma Lucia, which is a studio I've been working with for 10 years. So this is also a relationship that I've been creating for a long time. So I don't know. This is a very different work from the work that I guess I've ever really done. And yeah, I guess that's it.
No, genetic tests can be really interesting.
That's a colonizer mindset. White people claiming a black ancestor to legitimize their whiteness.
What? No, it tells you where you're from, like if you're Swedish or Icelandic.
That's white supremacy speaking. People with noble lineage tracing their heritage, whereas poor people
I don't
like
think
me...
that's how it works. You don't have to come from a rich family to make...
Don't interrupt me. I'm speaking. I'm educating you, honey. This is not the time for you to talk.
Thank you.
I don't know. Does this work? Yeah. Thank you, Filipa. Thank you, Gabriel. It's a pleasure to be here with Leonardo and Anne and with all of you. Thank you so much for being here. So, the Nefkens Foundation, we actually connect people through art. Who we are, the foundation is founded by Mr. Nefkens. Nefkens lives in Barcelona. He's a writer and a collector, and he went from collecting to producing. So since, I would say 7-8 years, he started to produce, only concentrate his activities in the foundation on production of video art. So we support video production, and we make possible that these works are seen. For us, essential are, of course, our artists, but also our partners. These are all our partners. Since 7 years, we worked with more than 60 institutions, art institutions worldwide. This goes from artist-run spaces like, for example, Sun Art in Vietnam, to M+ in Hong Kong, to the Mori Foundation, to Rockbund, Art Jamil, NTU in Singapore, Wheels, Loop, Barcelona, Madrid, and so on. So I will explain you a bit how we work. It sounds complicated, but it's very easy. With all these partners, so over 60 institutions with whom we worked, now today, more or less yearly, we work with over 45 institutions and art centers. We do this through grants and co-commissions. So we have every year 6 grants of co-commissions. We're working on 2 new ones, so we will have 8 for next year. And I take one case study. Actually, it was the first one we made, and it's the Nefkens Loop Barcelona Video Art Production Grant. And you see it's in collaboration with Copenhagen, with Ilgam Gallery in Kuala Lumpur, with Inside Outside Out Art Museum Beijing, Maxi Rome, Mocha Taipei, Mot in Tokyo, and Museum Picasso. So how does it work? So every grant has his partners. Every partner will at the beginning nominate 2 scouts. So more or less we will have 10 or 12 scouts. This grant is for an Asian artist. So it means that the scouts will be located or know very well the art scene in Asia. It's also a grant for emerging artists. So these 10 scouts, every year we make the grant, the scouts changes. So we worked, I think, with more than 600 or 700 curators worldwide. Once we have the 10 scouts, we ask them to nominate 2 artists. We don't work with an open call. Then we have a long list, and each scout nominate 2 artists. So we will have a long list of 20, 24 artists. And then we have a jury meeting with all these institutions. So when I said this, the partners for us are very important, because they are the ones who will select with us the artist, but also they promise from the beginning that the artist will get an exhibition in their space. So once the artist is selected, the artist gets $15,000 from us. We do the whole organization from the jury until the artist makes the work, and then, in this case, gets 6 exhibitions. So what is interesting in the whole network, the Nefkens Foundation, I forgot to say, we don't have an own space, we don't have an exhibition space, and we don't have an office. An office is easy, it's my computer, so this is not mine, but okay, it's a computer. But each grant we have, so I said we have 6 or 7 grants, each grant had different partners. So all these partner institutions, they do have spaces and they do have teams, because we also are a very small team. It's me and Alexandra Biscaro, that some of you know, who is one of our freelance coordinators. We follow the whole process. What is interesting in the whole way of working is actually that for the artist, he or she doesn't only get the money to produce a work, but get 6 exhibitions, and 6 exhibitions in 6 different cultural, socio-political contexts, very different. And they also, we help the artist, we support the artist in the production, but once the production is done, the artist is in contact with the institution. So artists get also an interaction with different curators, different art centers, and from there on they discuss together, because it's up to the institution to decide if they make a solo show, a group show, if they do a screening program, because they know their program, they know their visitors. So it's up to each institution to then start a dialogue with the artist. So what is also interesting for the 20 artists who are nominated is that they are seen by 6 institutions. It's very difficult that an institution, directors and curators of an institution, look through your portfolio and look to all this video work you make. So it's also for the ones who doesn't get the grant an opportunity. And we have seen in the past that some of the artists get sometimes exhibitions because a curator or a director is interested in an artist who didn't got the grant, because it's not an award, it's not for the best, it's for the artist that we all think together would benefit the most, would really make a step in the evolution of his work. Also, the Nefkens Foundation doesn't vote. We don't have a voice. And that's why I say Nefkens is really a philanthropic foundation, because we don't ask anything in return. We give and we share. The institutions, for them it's also interesting. At the moment you get to see what happens at that time in Asia. You get, through a scouting system, you get a list of 20 artists that maybe most of them you don't know. So all our grants have different kind of focuses. This is the Asian one, we have a Southeast Asian one, a South Asian one, West Central Asian one. So, and these are some of the exhibitions we made. I want to make it short that we get into the timing now. So as I said, we have grants and co-commissions. So the grants are basically with 6, 7 partners, like the one I showed you. And it's $15,000. We have co-commission grants. That's with 3 larger museums, for example, the Singapore Art Museum, IMPLUS, and Mori Foundation. That's $100,000, but it's a collecting grant. So it means that the artist will give a copy of the work to the museums. And we bring in 40,000 and each museum brings in 20,000. So it's a way that through production, they get to collect. The Nefkens Foundation never asked for a copy of the works. These are some images, so you have some ideas. So this year we have 19 openings worldwide. And each grant involves like 50 persons between the scouts and the artists. That's Mr. Nefkens. This was our first winners, Tao Niergend Aziz Hazar, that we supported. We also occasionally, when we support also biennales, that's a kind of trust we have in the curators who are directing the biennales, but that's kind of side projects we have. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Loop, Filipa and Emilio. Thanks for inviting me. This is the first time I'm coming, and I'm delighted. So my name is Lena Vaney. I'm a producer and artistic director. I created my company 25 years ago as a tool to develop projects with artists outside the white cube space. At the time, the framework of contemporary art was expanded to a more collaborative and relation prospects, and I was looking for another space of freedom to express ideas. So I went from a publication of lamps with Jorge Pardo, that was an idea of an exhibition without space, to a cafe with Pierre Huyghe and Philippe Pareno, M.M. Perry, to a feature-length film for cinema called Zidane, a 21st Century Portrait by Douglas Gordon and Philippe Pareno. I've always been interested by the power of the image and the medium of cinema, of the film. And I figured out very quickly that it was that may I have a little bit of water, please? Sorry. I figured out very quickly that to me, the time-based space I was interested in. Thank you. To me, it's the perfect exhibition space. It is like a magic box that you can open 50 years later, and it's still the same as the artist made it 50 years earlier. So what I like is really working closely with artists on a long-term scale, and I like the conversation in resonance with the artist always. So, to me, the films are visual poems, and I would like to. I mean, I wanted to go quickly to a few films that I worked recently by Pierre Huyghe, Kamata, and Liminal that are shown in Venice at the Pinot Collection in Punta del Dogana. This is a 3D film of 30 minutes that I did with Kujunga, which is also showing in Venice. This one entitled Mask with Pierre Huyghe, the series of No Ghost, Just a Shell. That's if you want to go into the brain of Matt Dillon, interferes. Just I've done a lot of film with Sofia Almaria, and this one is one of my favorites. It's a beautiful film. Pierre Huyghe again. This one is a very beautiful film. It was just made 21 days after the start of the war between Ukraine and and Russia. And Marine Gognier went to the place with a team. Of course, everybody was working for free. She did a beautiful and mesmerizing document on what happened at the station of the. And all the phones of the film were actually sent to the refugees with a big box of. Anyway, this one is a film that was in Cannes of this beautiful singer Christophe. That was shown on the big screen of Times Square. Anyway, I'm not gonna go. This is ridiculous. I mean, there's many, but how many minutes do I have? Okay, so I mean, Filipa suggested that I would talk about two films that are very different. The first one is Zidane. Where is my? I'm gonna find out. Okay, Zidane. That was a film by Douglas Gordon and Philippe Arnaud, which was released in 2006. It's a portrait in real time of a man at work. It happens to be Zidane on a field of Real Madrid. That was a complex film to make, of course, and because it was shot in 90 minutes, and it was part of an event that we actually didn't control, because it was a broadcast live game which we were filming, and we didn't know what happened. We only had one shot, and it was and Zidane got a red card at the end of the film. Fortunately, it wasn't at the first 2 minutes. I saw Patricia Sandretto Rerebodenko earlier. She's a co-producer of the film, and we were very happy to have her on board. It was very important at the time. Very complex setup with 17 cameramen. We flew from very different places and focals from the NASA that we we had to ask the Pentagon for getting them out of the US anyway. So that was distributed in cinema, and it was in Cannes, and it was also some artworks out of the film. Anyway.
You can't say it, but it's basically a masterpiece of the last
Okay, thank you.
Put it easy like that.
Thank you, Leonardo, my friend. The other one is a very interesting, beautiful film, which I love. It's a Pierre Huyghe. And it's called Away in Entails. Entails was a site-specific situation in a composting castle that unfolds in several months in 2012. And after came the desire from Pierre to capture the situation and also to give another perspective to the experience. So to make visible what we couldn't see with the human eyes. So I can show you some of the maybe some of the. So you see, it's a world within the world, you know. So we came with a very small setup to produce something like the feeling of something random, a chaos sort of mood, a mood of instead of fixed shot, something that was filming writing instead of. Okay, so you can see some of the. I show you some. It's very random what I'm showing. So, Lady Mouse, and also. Voila. And now I'm working on a feature film by Filipa Ramos, fiction for cinema, and also, and also I can show you. It's a really interesting project that I'm doing with many people. It's called the Feral. How do you? Oh, so it's always been like that. Okay. And the Feral is a collective artwork. It's original idea from Fabien Giraud, and it's a collective artwork at the scale of a landscape, a place for learning of an artificial intelligence in charge of creating a film. So basically, it's a film of 1,000 years, edited and shot by an AI, and the environment as it grows, it's progressively populating and transformed by the intervention of artists, invited to feed its learning as many co-authors of the fiction for 1,000 years. There's also an institute, and the Feral will be open to the public on 26 with the first collaboration of Fabien Giraud and Teerlinck. Voilà. That's all.
Yes, once again, also I associate to all the thanks that have been made to Filipa, Emilio, and all of you for being here, and also to my fellow panelists. It's my imposter syndrome is kicking in right now very hardly, considering the work that you have presented. So when I was preparing for this contribution, well, my name is Leonardo Bigazzi. I thought someone would introduce me. I don't like to speak about myself, so I will just say very briefly, I work for the Fondazione in Between Art Film, which is a fondazione that was established by Beatrice Bulgari 4 years ago. I work with her since the very beginning, and I've been working for 17 years for Lo Schermo dell'Arte, which is a festival in Florence. And within these two frameworks, I've been commissioning and producing around 30, 40 artist films in the past 4 years. So when I was thinking and preparing of this contribution, I took this little libretto that Filipa very well and the team crafted, and I read the first sentence of the text that introduces this panel: the beauty of making things happen. So I was like, well, this is perfect. This is what gets me out of bed every day. So I think I'm in the right place. So so I started thinking, well, but what is exactly, which are the factors that are determining or that I can commonly discuss for what it means producing an artist film? And I think we all know, I mean, at least definitely the ones who are working with production and commissioning, that there are as many ways of producing an artist film as many as the artists in this world that want to produce a film. So for each project, you really need to craft a whole different set of strategies, alliances, and so on and so forth. So I thought, well, what are then the three, if I have to find three factors that are guiding my work, which are they? And I came up with 3 words, which funnily enough are also the 3 works that right now I commission and produce that are currently shown in Barcelona. 2 are included in Manifesta, and 1 is actually shown here at Loop. So I thought maybe I can craft a presentation around these 3 words, and each work discusses as an example, as a case study, a little bit how they relate to these 3 words. And the 3 words, which actually were mentioned already by the previous panel, are trust, care, and network. If I have to look back at all the projects that I've done, these 3 words are present in each and every one of them in different capacities. Obviously, let's not be naive, funds are also important, but I don't think that they are fundamental at the beginning. I think if you have those 3 factors in place, funds will follow. Otherwise, and I hope I'm not offending anyone here, otherwise Norwegian and Swiss artists will be dominating every biennial and every exhibition in the world, and it's clearly not the case. So 3 projects are currently here in Barcelona. two of them were commissioned for Penumbra, the exhibition that I co-curated with the Fondazione Between Art Film 2 years ago in Venice. Some of you might have seen that, or might have seen the show that is currently running now, which is Nebula, or might have seen the work of Karima Ashado that I produced and commissioned also through the Fondazione Between Art Film, that ended up winning the Silver Lion, and it's showing at the Arsenale. So, but I decided to speak about three works that are here in Barcelona, because I think it's interesting that if you're then triggered by my words, maybe you can go and see how they resonate in the actual results by looking at the work, which in the end is the most important thing, not what we do, but like making the work happen. No, we have a fantastic artist here next to us, so it's important to say this. So the first word is trust, and this comes from a conversation that I was having last night with a young artist that I think is actually sitting here. I was describing a little bit what I was doing, and she said, well, you know, I think by doing this, what you're providing, the most important thing you're providing to an artist is trust. And, you know, I thought about it, and in fact, this is something I've been going on over and over again, like, but trust, what does trust really mean in this sense? Trust can be the first seed funding that you put on a project. 10, 15,000 euros, 20,000 euros is not important, but that, if you are a recognized institution, if you are a recognized platform, kind of creates that trigger that makes maybe several other funding follow, and that's why it's called seed funding. No, it's that little seed that then sort of activates the growth of the project. I think it's also about obviously taking the responsibility to work with an artist. We've discussed this before. Obviously, this relates more to commissioning, but I think it's also about trusting a process and trusting the vision of the artist. And this brings me to Ojo da Rua by Jonatas de Andrade that I co-commissioned 2 years ago for Penumbra, and that Guillermo was before referencing and mentioning. When Jonatas came to me, when I actually invited him to come and be part of Penumbra, I said to him, what are the projects you're working on? And he listed 4 ideas. The last one I saw, he was a little bit, and I was like, okay, so, but for you, which one is the most urgent one? And I had a feeling it was the last one, the one that was a bit more difficult. And he was, well, probably the last one. So we ended up working on this because I also felt it was the most urgent one. And as Guillermo was saying, is like basically activation that he did in the city of Recife, which is where he grew up, with the homeless community in town. I'm not going to go deep into the concept of the works. We can discuss it later. The second day of the opening in Venice, he came to me, hugged me, he's a grown-up man, and started crying. But not crying like, just literally crying. So I said to him, but Jonatas, what is going on? And he said, well, you don't know, but the reality is that I've been wanting to do this project for 5 years. And no one of the institutions that I was working with, several institutions around the world, wanted to commission this work because they felt it was too difficult. It could activate, questions about exploitation and so on. And this work ended up being, together with Opegse, one of the most successful works that he has done, and it's now sold out. It was bought by MoMA, by Innoteam, by many other institutions. And I think that's what I mean by trust, like kind of trust the vision and be ready to, kind of support the eventual consequences. But if things are made in a certain way, then surprises is around the corner, as Guillermo was saying. Well, the second project that I want to speak about relates to care. So for the previous work, I was not on set. I was not, in Brazil. I was following the process back and forth from a distance. I felt that's what the artist needed. Talking about that kind of distance you were discussing, Filipa, before, which is completely different from what this project is about, and what I speak about when I say about care. This was a project that was based on a very large community-based initiative in Pantelleria, a small island in the south of Sicily, where we activated the community around a specific episode of history around something that happened, a bombing that happened during the Second World War. And the fact that this needed the artist to spend a lot of time there, so when I speak about care, I also speak about time, how much time you dedicate to artists, how much you're ready to really be fully engaged when you think and feel that this is necessary. I ended up spending like around 2 months with them in Pantelleria. It was not a big sacrifice for the one of you who knows how beautiful Pantelleria is. If it was another place, then maybe I would have reduced a little bit. I'm being very honest here. But this was necessary because it was felt that it was necessary by the artist. So we work in different ways. When it's necessary to be fully engaged, I'm in the editing room with the artist. I'm with them on set. I craft a team around them. I mean, some of these things like selecting the right collaborators, dedicating time to artists, they seem to be banal, but I think there's a lot of artists here in the room that would testify the fact that they're some of the rarest most of the time that you can have with an institution when you work with them. And honestly, for me, it's also a political act to do like that, because if there's one thing that challenges consumerism and this idea of, taking something right away and then throw it away and then forget about it, is time. It's like how to work with artists over and over, for example, over a decade, which is the case with many artists that I work with. So, I'm doing good? 3 minutes, okay. So let's go to the network. The network for me is definitely not PR, but it's kind of identifying a number of institutions and peers and individuals that you trust, that you share values with, many of which are not only on this panel. I've worked with everyone sitting here, but also many will be tomorrow in the panels and were before, in the panel before. It's about finding strategies around the single project. So it's not about sending out a single project to everyone you know, but it's thinking who is the right match on this project. Also because if you pull the jacket of a partner on a project that they don't feel their own, most probably it's going to be the last you're going to do with them. So it's much better to kind of create, obviously have a wide network. This is goes without saying, but a network that is activated through maybe the first previous values, trust and care. So that really, based on values, you can really build something meaningful together with those partners. And the reason why this relates to the project of Gérard Dortin Castelvy, which I invite you to go and see at the booth of Angels upstairs at Loop, is because this project was produced through a format that I initiated in the context of the festival in Florence, but that the foundation supports, which is called Visio Production Fund. Visio Production Fund is something initiated within another platform that I've been founding and initiating 13 years ago, and which will be the subject of a presentation of a book tomorrow, where I select a number of artists, young artists based in Europe, and I invite them for 1 week in Florence. They develop their own project. And 3 of them ended up having a production grant of 10,000 euros, and they work with me over the span of 1 year, usually, can be more, to produce the work. So why do I speak about network in relation to this? Is because we didn't have the money in Florence to do this, because Lo Schermo dell'Arte is counting every penny. So I thought, how can I devise a strategy for which institution can partner with us and put a little bit of the commissioning money into it, or production money into it. And the way it came about is that, once again, I always say this also to my students, like, you have to start from the ones who are closer to you. So I went to the Frac Bretagne in France because I've served on their committee for 3 years, acquisition committee. I've served there for free for 3 years and made them buy a lot of great works. So I was like, you might as well give me something back at this point. So then I went to the Centro Pecci, which is a local museum. It's like the first contemporary art museum in Italy. It was started in Prato many years ago. And I have a good relationship with the museum. I've curated shows there. So once again, it made sense as a partner. And I went to Fondazione in between our film. That was rather easy because I just switched my cap and made it happen together with Alessandro Rabottini and Beatrice Bulgari. So each one of these institutions put half of the commissioning budget, and the other half is given by the Lo Schermo dell'Arte. And the first edition goes to the partner institution, which is something not only as an exchange of the work we do together, but mainly also that serves the CV of an artist, having then in the same vision of what Hilde described with the Nefkens Foundation, the vision of supporting the artist practice with a work that enters the public collections and then travels and is being promoted by them. So I hope these can be 3 small examples that can trigger further conversation, and of course later on, if someone is interested to know more about the work we do, we can talk about it later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leonardo, and thank you so much, all. And actually, what you mentioned about this sentence that describes this panel calls for an acknowledgement, which is the fact that this idea of the beauty of making things happen is inspired by the description that Lena has on the website that introduces the production company, where there's this reference about how she makes things happen. And it's beauty, but it's also sweat and tears and sleepless nights and all the rest. And maybe on that, I would have a question. And maybe I start, Gabriel, with this question, but it's also for all of us because it's a concern shared, which is about how to and also bridging from commissioning to production, how to make something happening, stretching the budget of a commission that is never enough, that is always a fragment, and then how can you stretch this and make it more and make it enough for something to actually to reach the point where the film that you want can be made?
Yeah, I think almost everybody except for Coppola, who I think sold half of his wine estate for $300 million to make Megalopolis, feels that it's we always want what we make to seem like it's twice as big, twice as ambitious, twice as expensive, twice as good, twice as meaningful. And often it's very hard. The first films I was making for $100. You want it to look like it's a $200 film or something. But the same logic applies now. And I think that comes a lot from, sweat. Like the horror film that I did, me and Margarita Lucas, who's my co-producer and partner, we decided that all of the work that we do wasn't going to come out of the budget. And so directing, screenplay, editing, soundtrack, and production were given by us or something. And that means that you've just grown the budget some 25% or something. So that's just sweat, and that's very similar to any other industry, I imagine, where you put in your sweat equity and you have that pay off in some way. And then in these films, these installations, or for example, this commission at Gulbenkian, initially the budget was just the commission amount, which was great. It was one of the biggest commissions I'd gotten from a single institution. And then we went almost twice over budget. And that, luckily we had that, but we were trying to find other collectors, other partners to come in. We couldn't. We're still trying to find some to pay that off. And then we started applying to other financing, public financing as well. So I'm still waiting to find out if public financing is coming, if the second edition sells, etc. So sometimes it's just that risk, you know? It's like I wasn't going to let the piece be half finished or something, so I just had to do it. And then in other works, I did a work that went to the Bienal de São Paulo, and the Bienal commissioned it, and Colección Inelcom in Madrid, and Serralves. But while we were in Brazil, the real had a flip of its value. So all of a sudden we had a lot less money. And our producer, our production director, is very good with people but very bad with accounting, which I didn't know at the time. And so we got back to Portugal, and all of the budget for post-production was gone. And we all of a sudden had to find about 30,000 euros or something. And that was just a risk that we were taking. Again, it was coming out of other funds from paintings or whatever, and then we tried to make that up with public funding. So I don't know. We all know that it's this very precarious thing, and it doesn't matter if you're doing a project that's for $100 or a project for $100,000. If you're always trying to make it bigger than it should be, you often get into these positions of risk. and I think it comes, I think what you were saying of being 2 months in a place, and I'm sure that, everybody who produces films does the same thing. It's like there's a lot that is sweat and care and being there, and a lot of people. For a lot of years I worked with Nacho Checa, who is the director of ZDB, and we would just go. We went to Brasilia together, we went to Sri Lanka together, and there's also, it's not only my sacrifice, but the people who are working around me, whether it's producers or other collaborators. Like I collaborate with other artists as well. So I think it comes from that, where you try to make every drop of sweat count, I guess.
Thank you.
I can add something on that. I think, I mean, I can totally relate from the perspective of a curator. I think this is true not only for films but also for exhibitions. I think there's a push, which is once again very capitalist, to overproduce sometimes things when it's not necessary. And one of the jobs that I think we have sometimes is to really have a dialogue with the artist, going back to trust and care, and make them understand that maybe those lines of budgets are not necessarily important in relation of the strength of the idea. Because sometimes, let's say size, to be very banal, but like are ways of compensating the insecurities in relation to an idea and a work. And sometimes it's just a matter of saying, it's all there already. So there's no need of that extra CGI. There's no need of that extra sound work. I only do that when it's true. When I feel that it's not true, then I run to find more money. That's the two other options.
Yeah, I totally agree. To me also, it's very important to keep the vision of the artist always. And sometimes you need to many years to make a film, because you just go step by step, and you don't really know where you're going first, but then you keep going, and at some point it's just with you sculpt that malleable force that is a medium, and it's very beautiful. It's very important for me to just keep the funding and keep the freedom of the artist to have, and to keep the vision also, so you're not trapped into some sort of
and I like to think that this is a mindset that we have because we come from contemporary art. Because I've seen producers, I'm not making distinctions, of course, but like the film context, being an industry, being commercial, at some point it's about making it happen for that timing, because there is the premiere of the festival, there is this and that. We have the privilege sometimes to say, if it's not, of course, a commission for an opening exhibition, but to say, if you need more time, let's take more time, which is something is happening to me right now on 3 projects that I'm working on, including the one we're working together on. Filipa Ramos. So that's something you need to accept.
I was going to mention that.
And in relation to this, Hilde, you mentioned something really impressive was looking at this map and the amount of relationships that the Nefkens has, from Singapore to Brazil to here in Barcelona. And I imagine that it is complex also as a funding body, as an institution, to understand how to create these partnerships. No, it's something I also asked in the panel before, is how to build a network of institutions that are funding, supporting artists, no? And how do you come together? How do you have aligned visions? And how do you also are flexible enough to understand that maybe the funding that may seem a lot that you dedicated to a project may need to be backed up by others and become the work of a network of entities?
I think the first thing is you start with 1, then you go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 60, no? So it's over 5, 6 years. And I think the most important thing is that everybody who works with us, is partner of us, comes to us because they want to work with us. So it's We are a private foundation, we don't have any agenda, we don't need to work with somebody. So you come to us and we work together on a voluntary base, what is a luxury sometimes. And also it's people who believe in blind dates, I have to say. Yeah, because you're going to show an artist and you don't know who will win, which project, what he or she will make. You can't even come up with the artist because it comes through a scouting system. And that's actually, and I was surprised how many people want to blind date. But that's true. So it's about trust, finally. It's about trust and sharing. But the most important thing about as a network is also it's a very light model. So we select together an artist, it's 1 or 2 meetings, and then it's video work. So you can show it. We ask also the artist to do 1 channel. So everybody, even Sanart, with a small artist-based space, can show 1 video projection, or the Mori. So it's quite easy, a flexible format. But it's actually about trust, and it's also, I think, about it's a very nice space we create where we can exchange about ideas and visions of artists. Because when we have a jury meeting, we don't vote, we just talk, and we talk together, and everybody together, because you have to see 6 museums has to agree on 1 artist and trust the artist. Not only trust them, but also together say okay, we go for the artist from Thailand or whatever, no? So it's also a kind of, it's very interesting, these meetings in which all these partners together analyze and see what is the potential, because it's not based on a project, it's on what the artist has done. So I think, talking about the network, it's also a network. You don't create only a network of, I share this work and you will share it and you will share. No, we create a common space where everybody with his differences, and let's say that today in this world where we are living, this would be very important if everybody could do this, or everybody from a different point of views come together and talk and select together and together say, okay, we go for this project. So
yeah, we're stronger together, for sure.
Yeah.
And I really believe that today it's very important to make things together.
Yeah, this is what Ur was saying before, like the idea of instead of having this idea of use prima noctis logic, that you have to be the first, you think like, let's come together in 3 or 4 institutions and make it meaningful. I wanted to make a joke about the blind date thing, because like, of course, a blind date works if then the date when they show up, she's beautiful and also like intelligent, and this is what you bring to the table as well.
In our blind there are 20 very good.
What?
In our blind dates there are 20 very beautiful.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. You show up and you know, you bring all the knowledge and the history of what you've been doing. So that's also what works, like being very serious with what you do and building up on that, because it's the same story of us. Like the first show we did in Venice obviously had a certain kind of recognition, but when it came to the second, like we had partners like Bataya, for example, with whom we did this beautiful co-production with Saudati Ismailova, came up to us and said like, we are interested in what you have been doing, why don't we share a common ground on a project? And with the same spirit that you just described, coming together and not saying this is what we're doing, what do you think, but just coming together and deciding together.
Yeah, and also maybe in network sometimes we are looking for the same partner, same level. But we see that, for example, the Loop one, we have partners of different formats, and that's also interesting, that the Museum of the MoCA of Taipei speaks with the smaller institution. So it's kind of, can be very interesting.
And in relation to that, I have a question that also concerns where we are, and where Loop is also hosting galleries, and galleries that are showing works that are for sale. And often we have to combine public funding, private funding, and a collaboration with galleries, no? Which of course may support the work and may help for its longer life and in economical terms. On other occasions, there could be clashes between receiving public funding and then having works that go for sale. So I would be interested in asking, and again, a question for who wants to answer. How has it been? How do you conceive the relationship between private institutional funding and the commercial sector and the galleries?
I can pick up on that. I mean, I think galleries are doing an extremely important job for the artist. I always call them like a sparring partner, no? Like, which is not only someone who sells your work, but like really calls your fists, and by doing that really trains you in a way. That's the way I see it. I think the dialogue with the gallery, if it's the right one, is like really essential and fundamental. And as that, it becomes important as a presence and as a someone you have to talk to and engage in the production. In terms of how you calculate, I think the sales, for example, of a work into the production budget, I would make the example when you do a festival, you never budget the tickets that you will sell, because the idea is that you don't know how many people will show up. So if you budget that in the budget, then it's going to become a problem. So for me, it's the same with the sales of a work, which honestly, on every work that I always did, have nothing to do with what I do. So I can facilitate something to happen. If it happens organically, I'm extremely happy. I don't gain nothing out of it. I would be very financially stable if I did that in the past, but I don't. So if it happens, it's a good bonus for the artist, and if everybody is happy, the gallery is happy, the artist is happy, this means that in the future, the collaboration with the same artist or with other artists from the gallery will be even more easy and facilitated by all the partners involved.
Sure.
But also, I think I don't know if it was Andrea Fraser in eFlux that wrote just an article about the sort of map of the different sectors of the art world. And I don't know if it's there or somewhere else that I read that the sales of video art at Basel is like 1% or something.
Yeah.
So I think there's also that reality. We shouldn't deny that reality, that it's not the most lucrative medium, let's say, in art video, unless you're at a certain scale or a certain gallery. But for most people, me included, there's a specter, a ghost in the shell. Exactly. Even in my work, I was saying that, there was so many years of precarity. And I was saying like, oh, I won this prize and put the money into it, or I did this painting show and put the money into it. It's never like I sold 10 videos and I put that money into the production of the work. That's the most rare form of financing for the work. Sometimes, like for example, for Gulbenkian, it was a commission on the exchange of the first edition. So it is a sale that's being done in a certain way. But that's the only scenario where the cost of
I'm so sorry.
That's beautiful. Oh. Beautiful bruitage.
You just do it.
But in all the other films, the sale was never really accounted for, and it's never something that's I'm counting on. So it's very much funding from an institution, funding from public funds that are financing these things, or a lot of the times in my case, my own funds are the artist funds, right? The prize money should have been money for me to live on, not necessarily to produce a piece off of or something. And I think that's actually, and also just to respond to the thing that you were saying, Leonardo, of like the ambition, sometimes it's oversized. And I think with the Coppola example, it might be, the prime example of that, where there probably wasn't a necessity to spend $300 million on that film.
But maybe it is. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, so I should see it first before saying.
We should all see it, because it's such a beautiful gesture. I think. Just to.
So a wrong example. But I was actually gonna say that, which is a lot of times, I don't know, I think the ambition. I've studied a lot of the metrics, mostly in film, like what's the minimum budget of a feature film to be seen by the public? Because there is a limit. If you make a $1 million film, it's not going to have public at all. It just isn't. There's 2 cases when the Palme d'Or was won by a film that's under $2 million. It's Apichatpong and Gus Van Sant, There's not many others. And we love those films. Those films are absolutely beautiful, and I don't think they needed more than about $2 million to be as perfect as they are, right? But in most cases, the average film in Cannes, it's $10 million. I've never reached a budget similar to that at all. So I think that economy is very, very real, and it's something that I think I don't know, as an artist, it's hard to hear people say like, your ambition, your eyes are glowing with the candy or something. You want these big dollar signs to have a big production. That's not necessarily where the heart of the work is, but there are some minimums, and I think a lot of artists and a lot of filmmakers are below that minimum threshold or something. When you're making a short film on film for $5,000, it's very hard to you're literally buying the film and paying for developing the film, and that's it.
No, I think it's very important, of course, to distinguish what we're talking about. If we're talking about features and like, film industry distribution, that's a whole other world. Like, obviously, what I'm referring to and the vast majority of the works that I'm involved in are works that are mainly thought through as works that go to the galleries. And then, of course, we build bridges, and often the works end up in major film festivals, also in competitions. But, that's a whole world that is contained within those frameworks. What you're saying is absolutely true. Like, when you want to have that certain ambition to go above that, then that's, budget is something that it's not.
Pierre Huyghe
size
as well,
matters,
right?
let's say.
Pierre Huyghe as well. There are these, exquisite, beautifully produced productions, right? Which I imagine are probably expensive.
But I mean, you don't need to all these millions to make a film that goes that breaks through festivals. It doesn't.
Totally.
I mean. No, I mean, to me, it's where the artists are more usually more imagination and ideas than they know how to compose with.
In our case, in the foundation, of course, production is important. But I think when an artist gets a grant in the Nefkens Foundation, it's true you get production money. But what is more important is the 6 exhibitions worldwide, because this will give you visibility. And we have seen, I have a board meeting on Friday, and they asked me to see of 4 artists, what is the result. And we have seen that the last who won like 2 years ago a grant, they had over 24 exhibitions, and were artists who never known. Nor Abed, we have seen this morning, or Maya Watanabe, or they had, and they got, because they are seen in 6 countries. So many curators see them. And
but once again,
many foundations afterwards, like you.
No, but because this has to do with trust. Like, the idea is like, if 6 museums all over the world are giving trust to that artist to show in their museum a commission that they don't know beforehand what it's going to be, it means that, they see something in it. And a lot of people, as we know, follow the vision of very few in the art world. Like, we go to Venice, there's like 15 people who say that show is the show you have to see, and a whole bunch of other people will just follow that lead. So in that sense, that's the kind of responsibility that I was talking about. It's not only visibility, it's really like, what I feel is like the trust of, at least when how much I admire the work that you do, and how much I think it's a model, a healthy model on so many levels. Because of this, like, you really give a recognition that makes a huge difference, especially for young artists.
This is wonderful. It's a panel where I feel so redundant, because you you do everything. And maybe we should open, and there are questions. Marta has a microphone.
We spoke too much.
Any questions?
We answered all the questions
before they were even asked.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think that
There is one?
Yeah.
No? No one? What a shy audience. Last chance?
Yeah.
There's one.
So
it's not so much a question, but it's just to continue this conversation about artists, and following on what Gabriel was saying in this economy. Usually, when you work in film, video and film, you don't necessarily, as an artist, work with categories. You want to make a film, and sometimes you want to make a short video, and it might maybe 10,000 or 5,000 would be enough. But sometimes you have projects that you don't know exactly how much they will cost, but they don't fit in the economy of the art world in the sense of 20,000 or 30,000 would not be enough. But they also don't fit the economy of the cinema industry. If it's a feature film, it might need 200,000 or 300,000, but it doesn't fit the format of the film industry, which is very formatted in the way you have to write the script, the way you have to present even applications, etc. And I think very often artists who have the ambition to do several projects and where the form does not precede, the form comes following a research or a desire, and then find themselves trapped in the meanders of these productions and format. And it would be interesting to see, because you're all at different level and different steps of the production. It would be interesting to have your response on that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my work was in between those two worlds. And there were some curators, or for example, Francisco Fino, the gallerist who I'm here at Loop with, he's somebody who came to me because he loved the videos I made and loved them as fine art. But there was some people from the fine art world that saw them too much as film. But then there's some people from the film world that see them too much as art. So I don't know, I've always been in between, and the artists that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, Kenneth Anger and Andy Warhol, their film work also is in some weird in between. They were rejected by the sort of more fine art film, experimental film people of their time. So I don't know, I do think it's hard. I think it is a struggle. And even for the art world scale, I'm not talking about feature film production budgets, I think it's very easy, to be below the minimum production line, where it is extremely precarious and where that's a lot of weight on the shoulder of the artists, the producers, everybody who's working on the piece.
I can add something, because I hear these thoughts a lot. I think the reality is that artists are always leading the way, and funds and infrastructures and institutions are trying to follow that lead and understand how they can accommodate that interest, or at least this would be the healthy way to see it. So what I've witnessed in the past 20 years, which is more or less my career, is that things have already shifted a lot. Like the formats and the context in which artist films are shown in festivals and in cinema have multiplied exponentially. Like almost every film that I commission and produce ends up in a major competition in a festival in Europe. There's a deep interest, and I think first of all, because I believe that the structures of cinema are obsolete, especially the funding bodies, because obviously they're not able to accommodate what is the most forefront of what is at the forefront of experimentation in moving images, and that's why I believe that what is coming out from art, especially in terms of short films, have such a great recognition in the cinema, in the film world, because like those possibilities are simply not there anymore in funding bodies in the film context, except for France and another few other countries. So my invitation to all of us is like to try to think formats that can accommodate what you have just shared with us, because it's obviously very important, because whatever stays at the threshold and doesn't fit a format, it's probably interesting to follow. That's at least what I try to do, for example, with the possibilities that I have.
Thank you. I think we should wrap up. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.